What's happening in Ashbourne right now could change the entire future of this franchise. And I can't believe some fans still haven't realized the magnitude of what we're dealing with. This week we've seen 3 headlines that will determine whether the Commanders finally make the leap or if we continue being the same mediocre team as always. After years of watching this organization make questionable decisions, Adam Peters is showing us a new mindset that has the entire NFL turning their eyes on us. But it's not all rosy, and you need to know the full truth about what's happening with our star receiver, the veteran who could change everything in the offense, and the player that national media are finally recognizing as the future of our defense. Stick around to the end, because what I'm going to reveal about each of these situations will leave you speechless. You know what's got me completely excited today, Commanders? Finally, the national media are waking up to what we hear in the DMV news since last year. Johnny Newton, our second-year defensive tackle, was just included in Bucky Brooks' 2025 NFL All-Breakout Team on NFL.com. And let me tell you, it was about time. When Newton was picked as the 36th overall pick in the 2024 draft, many questioned if it was too soon. The kid came with foot surgery and missed practically all of the first year's preparation. But you know what happened when he finally had the chance? This young man from Illinois showed exactly why Peters chose him so high. Look at these numbers. Bucky Brooks highlighted 44 tackles, 6 for loss, 7 quarterback hits, and 2 sacks in 16 games, including 11 as a starter. But that doesn't tell the whole story. I watched every play, every snap that Newton was on the field, and what I saw was a player who simply doesn't give up. Now, let me explain what really happened last year with Newton, because the full story is much more impressive than those numbers suggest. When the kid arrived from Illinois, he came with a foot injury that required surgery during his senior year. That meant he missed practically the entire off-season conditioning program, mini camps, and much of the preseason training. Basically, Newton had to learn the NFL on the go, without the usual preparation a high draft pick would have. But here's the incredible part. Despite all these disadvantages, Newton showed exactly why Adam Peters selected him in the second round. Bucky Brooks specifically mentioned his powerful hands and his relentless motor, and that's exactly what I saw when I reviewed last season's film. This kid has a unique combination of physical power and mental resilience that you simply can't teach. And you know what excites me the most about all this? Brooks says, with more responsibility and freedom within the scheme, Newton could become Dan Quinn's designated playmaker on the defensive front. And I believe that's not just optimism. That's a prediction based on what Newton has already shown. When Jonathan Allen got injured with that partial pectoral injury, Newton was literally thrown into the fire. Without proper preparation, without the complete conditioning of a normal preseason, this kid put the team on his shoulders. And he didn't just survive, he thrived. I've seen plays where Newton was being double-teamed by NFL veterans and still found ways to be disruptive. Now, let's talk about what this means for the future. Washington's defensive line has been considered the weak link of the team throughout the offseason. Everyone's worried because Darren Payne had a pretty questionable 2024 season, and because Javon Kinlaw, despite starting well in Washington, has to justify that considerable contract we gave him. But here's the thing nobody's discussing. If Newton makes that leap we're all hoping for, suddenly we have real depth on the defensive line. We're not talking about a rotation player who occasionally makes a good play. We're talking about a potential starter who could be our best defensive tackle sooner than everyone expects. Brooks mentioned Newton's disruptive abilities at the point of attack, and that's exactly what Dan Quinn needs in his defensive system. Quinn has always preferred players who can create chaos in the opposing backfield, and Newton has exactly those traits. His combination of hand power and physical stamina allows him to maintain pressure throughout the game. And here's what really excites me for this season. Newton is going to have a complete offseason of preparation for the first time in his NFL career. He's going to have the entire conditioning program all the minicamps, the entire preseason to truly master Quinn's system. If he could do what he did last year with limited preparation, imagine what he can do with a full year of development. But what impresses me most about Newton isn't just his physical abilities, it's his mentality. I saw a player who never gave up, who was always looking for ways to improve, who embraced the challenge of being thrown into the fire as a rookie. That mentality is exactly what you need in a defensive lineman in the NFL. And you know what? I believe Brooks is completely right in his assessment. Newton has all the tools to be Quinn's designated playmaker on the defensive front. He has the hands to control offensive linemen, the motor to play snap after snap, and the mentality to make important plays when the team needs them. If that surprises you, wait until you hear this. Zach Ertz didn't just come here to be another name on the roster. This 34-year-old veteran came to Washington with a dual purpose that could be exactly what Jayden Daniels needs to take. The next step in his development. First, let's talk numbers. 654 yards and 7 touchdowns in his first season with us. But beyond statistics, what caught my attention were his recent comments about his role on the team. Ertz said something I loved: being able to help the young guys. In the room, sharing what I've learned, that's a big part of why I love this game. But here's what's cool about this. Ertz isn't just limiting himself to the role of a mentor. The veteran made it very clear that he doesn't play this game just to be there. He's here to make plays and help the team win. And you know what? I believe that mentality is exactly what we need in this tight end room. Now let me explain why Ertz's arrival is much more significant than most people realize. When Adam Peters signed Ertz, he wasn't just acquiring a veteran tight end. He was bringing a player who has seen it all in this league, who has played on winning and losing teams, and who understands exactly what it takes to succeed at. The highest level. Ertz comes from a career where he has amassed over 800 receptions and more than 8,000 yards. He has been All-Pro, has played in playoffs multiple times, and was a key piece in the Philadelphia team that won the Super Bowl. But most importantly, he has maintained a level of consistent production throughout his career, which is exactly what a young quarterback like Daniels needs. When Ertz talks about any time you're learning a new offense, you've got to be able to digest and apply it. He's speaking from the experience of someone who has done exactly that multiple times in his career. And when he says he feels like he's getting better every day, that tells me he's fully committed to the learning process, even at this point in his career. But here's what really excites me about Ertz's impact. When he talks about being able to help the young guys in the room, sharing what I've learned, he's not talking about general concepts. He's talking about specific details on how to run routes against different coverages, how to read defenses in real time, how to position himself in the red zone, all those little things that separate good tight ends from elite ones. And don't forget what he said about Jayden Daniels. Jayden has composure, man. You can tell he belongs here. The ball comes out clean, and he's already building confidence with his weapons. When a veteran with Ertz's experience says something like that about your quarterback, that means he's seen something special in the daily work, in training, in how Daniels prepares and executes. But here's what impresses me most about Ertz's comments. When he says, "I still love competing. I still love the locker room," he's making it clear he didn't come here to collect a check and quietly retire. He came here because he genuinely believes he can contribute to a winning team. And that mentality is contagious in a locker room. Now, let's talk about what this specifically means for Cliff Kingsbury's offense. Kingsbury has always used tight ends as security blankets for his quarterbacks, especially in third down situations. And in the red zone, Ertz has exactly the skill set Kingsbury needs: reliable hands, intelligence to find soft spots in coverage, and the experience to know when to make important plays. But beyond his individual contribution, Ertz is raising the level of the entire tight end room. When you have a veteran of his caliber working with the young guys every day, sharing techniques, explaining concepts, that makes the whole group better. And that's especially important for a second-year quarterback who needs all the reliable options possible. And here's something many people don't realize. Ertz isn't just helping Daniels on a technical level. He's helping on a mental level. When a young quarterback knows he has a reliable target that will always be in the right position, that gives him the confidence to make other riskier plays. It's like having a safety net that allows you to be more aggressive in other areas. Ertz also mentioned something about being excited to be learning and growing even at this point in his career, and that tells me he's fully bought into Kingsbury's system. He's not a veteran who's just trying to do things the way he's always done them. He's adapting, evolving, and that's exactly what you need from a veteran in a new offensive system. But here comes the really crazy part, and this is what has all the fans worried across the DMV. The situation with Terry McLaurin isn't just not improving, but now we have radio personalities suggesting something no fan wants to hear. Grant Powelson from 106.7. The fan said something this week that left me frozen. He wondered why McLaurin still hasn't asked for a trade. His exact words were, if he's upset enough to make a holdout, which never happens in this era, why not be willing to ask for a trade? And you know what? Powelson's not completely wrong in his logic. McLaurin has already lost more than $150,000 in fines, and every day that passes without signing an extension is money out of his pocket. He compared the situation to Trey Hendrickson, who's not only holding out with Cincinnati, but also formally requested a trade. But here's where the situation gets really complicated, and where I think Powelson's asking a legitimate question that all fans should be considering. McLaurin is losing real money every day. We're not talking pocket change. We're talking fines that pile up day after day, while he sits at home waiting for the organization to do the right thing. Let me explain exactly what's happening here. Because the situation is much more complex than it seems on the surface. McLaurin isn't holding out because he's greedy or doesn't want to play for Washington. He's holding out because, after years of being the most consistent and reliable player in this offense, he feels the organization isn't valuing him properly. And here's what really worries me. McLaurin is in the last year of his current contract, and at 26 years old, he's in the prime of his career. This is probably going to be his last truly big contract in the NFL. Every day that passes without an extension is one day closer to him considering all his available options. Powelson made a comparison to Trey Hendrickson that I can't ignore. Hendrickson is also holding out, but he's already made the move to formally ask for a trade. Why hasn't McLaurin done the same? Because, unlike Hendrickson, McLaurin still has faith that Adam Peters will do the right thing. But here's what makes me nervous. The relationship between McLaurin and the organization, according to reports, hasn't soured significantly during this prolonged standoff, but he feels disrespected and undervalued by the franchise. Those are dangerous words, Commanders. When a player of McLaurin's caliber feels disrespected, that can change quickly. And here's the part all fans need to understand. McLaurin hasn't asked for a trade because he deeply cares for the organization and his connection with the fan base. That all-pro player doesn't want friction building right now. But you know what? The friction is already building. Every day that passes without a resolution is one more day of friction. Now let me explain why this situation is so critical for the immediate future of the franchise. McLaurin isn't just another receiver. He's the number one weapon for Jaden Daniels. He's the reliable target that makes the whole offense work. Without him, the whole offensive structure changes dramatically. Peters has always stated his desire to keep McLaurin around and would probably reject any trade offers if they came in. But here's the reality. If McLaurin decides he no longer wants to be here, Peters will have no choice but to consider offers. And once that happens, we're talking about an asset that could go for much less than it's worth. But here's what really worries me about this whole situation. Holdouts in the modern era usually end one of two ways. Either the player gets the contract they want, or they ask for a trade. McLaurin has been holding out for weeks, has lost more than $150,000, And there's still no resolution in sight. And here's something Powson mentioned that got me thinking. In the modern era, holdouts almost always come with a trade request. It's the way players increase pressure on the organization. The fact that McLaurin hasn't done this yet suggests he still hopes an agreement can be reached. But what if that hope turns into frustration? What if McLaurin decides he can no longer trust the organization to do the right thing? That's where the situation becomes dangerous for all of us as fans. Because the truth is this: the Commanders need to extend. McLaurin, there's no middle ground here. There's no plan B that's remotely comparable. Peters isn't in the business of removing cornerstone pieces of the franchise when the stakes have been raised. But if McLaurin decides he no longer wants to be part of this franchise, Peters will have no option. And here's what makes me the most nervous about all this. Every day that passes without a resolution is one day closer to McLaurin considering the nuclear option. Because if he's willing to lose $150,000 and counting, what's stopping him from taking the next step and formally asking for a trade? The answer is simple: his love for this organization and for us as fans. But that love has limits, and I believe we are dangerously close to those limits. There you have it, Commanders. 3 news pieces that define the immediate future of this franchise. Newton waking up as a star, Ertz combining leadership with production, and McLaurin in a situation that needs to be resolved now. The question I ask you is this: do you believe Peters has everything under control, or are we on the brink of seeing one of these situations explode and change the entire team dynamic? Because after years of watching this organization make questionable decisions, we now have a general manager who seems to have a clear vision, but who is also being tested on multiple fronts. What do you think about Newton emerging as a potential star? Do you believe Ertz can be the piece Daniels needs to make the jump? And more importantly, are you worried that McLaurin might consider asking for a trade if this situation drags on? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, because this community is a family, and we need to be united as we navigate these crucial moments for the franchise. If you believe Peters is going to resolve McLaurin's situation before the season starts, give this video a like. If you think Newton will be our best defensive tackle this year, subscribe, because I guarantee you we'll have more explosive news on these topics tomorrow. And you can't miss what's coming, because this season could be historic for the Washington Commanders. Join this Burgundy and Gold family. Support us with your subscription and your comments, because together, we'll follow every move of this organization until we finally return to being legitimate contenders. And remember, hail to the Redskins!